forklift operator sa Singapore na bagsakan ng malaking container.
Ating alamin kung nakaligtas ba ang trabahador mula sa mga detalye ng balitang ibabahagi maya-maya. Magandang gabi, ako po si Rikki Mathay.
Ako si Rikki Alagao Flores. Ito ang mata ng Agila International para sa mga headlines ngayong araw ng Martes.
Pilipinas at United Arab Emirates nangakong mas palalalimin pa ang kanilang economic at trade cooperation.
Vice President Sara Duterte sinilbihan ng sabina dahil sa killed remark laban kay Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr.
Ang gabinete ng Israel nakatakdang suyurin at pagbotohan ng ceasefire proposal para sa Gaza at Lebanon.
16 na turista nawawala mula sa lumubog na yate sa Red Sea.
At game company sa likod ng Pokemon Go bubuo ng Geospatial Artificial Intelligence Model. Dumating na sa United Arab Emirates si Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr. para sa kanyang one-day working visit.
Ngayong Martes, nakipagpulong si PBBM sa kanyang counterpart na si His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan sa Abu Dhabi. Sa kanilang pagpupulong ay binigyan diin ng dalawang pangulo ang dedikasyon ng Pilipinas at ng UAE para palakasin ang kanilang bilateral ties. Kasama na rito ang kooperasyon sa ekonomiya, trade at sustainability. Personal ding pinasalamatan ng Pangulo si President Al Nahyan para sa tulong na binigay ng Gulf States sa bansa, kabilang narito ang pagbibigay ng training at suporta sa Philippine National Police o PNP at pagkakaloob ng humanitarian aid sa mga biktima ng nagdaang kalamidad sa Pilipinas. Ngayong 2024 ay pinagdiriwang ng Pilipinas at UAE ang ika-50 taong anibersaryo ng pagkakatatag ng kanilang diplomatic ties.
The former president should respect the Constitution, not disobey it. Yan po ang isa sa mga pinaalala ni Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin kay dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte matapos manawagan si Duterte na patalsikin sa pwesto si Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr. Nagbigay pa ng suhestyon ng dating Pangulong ang papalit sa pwesto ni Marcos ay si Vice President Sara Duterte. Tinawag ni Bersamin na makasarili ang umano'y motibo ng dating Pangulong ipalit sa pagkapangulo ang anak nitong si Vice President Sara. Git niya, dapat ay igalang ni Duterte ang saligang batas ng Pilipinas. Hinikayat din nito ang dating Pangulong itigil na ang pagiging irresponsable kagaya ng dati. Tiniyak pa ni Bersamin na hindi tatalikuran ni Marcos ang sinumpaang tungkulin nitong pamunuan ang bansa at magsilbi sa mga Pilipino na ayon sa konstitusyon at rule of law.
Dumating sa tanggapan ng Office of the Vice President OVP ang mga tauhan ng National Bureau of Investigation o NBI para isilbi ang sabina para kay Vice President Sara Duterte. Kaugnay ito ng pahayag ng bise na may inutusan daw siyang pumatay kina Pangulong Ferdinand Marcos Jr., First Lady Liza Marcos at House Speaker Martin Romualdez kung magtagumpay ang umano'y balak na pagpatay din sa kanya. Pinahaharap sa tanggapan ng NBI Director Jaime Santiago ang Vice-Presidente sa November 29, 2024, araw ng Biyernes sa bandang alas 9 ng umaga. Ito ay upang bigyan ng pagkakataon ng Vice-Presidente na ipaliwanag sa NBI ang kanyang kill remark. Samantala, kumpiyansa naman si dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte na kaya ng kanyang anak na si Sara ang mga kontrobersiyang pinagdadaanan nito. Anya, kahit kasuhan ng Vice-Presidente ay hindi ito makukulong.
Wala pa naman tayong natanong. Pero hindi maliit na bagay masyado yan para tayo hindi mo unang gulo. Alam ko yan kasi na presidente ako. Yun lang, hindi ako magtanong, hindi ako magdagdag. Reserve ako muna lang. insignificant pa siya mo doon. Kasuhan mo na sa hindi, kasuhan na yun. Hindi naman makulong na.
Aprobado ng 6.352 trillion pesos na pambansang budget ng Pilipinas para sa susunod na taon. Ito ay matapos ipasa ng Senado sa final reading ang House Bill No. 10800 o ang General Appropriations Act of 2025. 18 senador ang pumabor at walang tumutol sa GAA habang nag-abstain o tumangging bumoto si Senate Minority Leader Coco Pimentel. Pinanatili ng Senado ang iminungkahing bersyon ng Kamara na 733 million pesos na budget naman para sa Office of the Vice President o OVP. Pero inalis naman ng Senado ang 39.8 billion piso na allocation para sa ayuda para sa Kapos ang Kita Program o AKAP na ipinasok ng Kamara sa panukalang budget. Matatandaan na wala ang AKAP sa National Expenditure Program ngunit isiningit ito ng Kamara upang ipantulong umano sa may maliliit na kita gaya ng minimum wage earners. Pinaghihinalaan ng marami na ipamudmud umano ang budget ng AKAP sa mga tao kapalit ng pagsuporta sa charter change sa pamamagitan ng People's Initiative. Sa isang text message naman sa media, niliwanag ni Senator Grace Poe, chairman ng Senate Committee on Finance, na pag-uusapan sa Bicameral Conference Committee ang mga pondo ng OVP at ng AKAP. Anya, kailangang konsultahin ng Senado ang Kamara ukol sa nasabing issue.
Maikokonsidera ng isang agent of influence si dismiss Banban Tarlac Mayor Alice Ko o Ko Hua Ping ayon sa isang opisyal na NICA. Binigyan diin ni NICA Deputy Director General Ashley Acedillo na ginamit ni Ko ang kanyang katayuan sa Pilipinas bilang isang alkalde para makinabang ang bansang kanya talagang pinagsisilbihan. Subalit sa kabila ng mga gawain ni Ko at ang koneksyon nito sa Pogo operations ay hindi pa nakaklasify ni Acedillo ang dating alkalde bilang spy o isang foreign intelligence agent. Anya, dapat mismo ang intelligence agency kung saan nagmula si Ko ang magkumpirma na siya ay isang espiya. Mariin namang itinanggi ng company ko ang lahat ng paratang na siya nga ay isang espiya.
Nagpaalala ang Department of Labor and Employment o DOLE sa mga employer na ibigay ang 13th month pay ng kanilang mga empleyado sa araw ng o bago mag-December 24. Sa ibinabang guidelines ng DOLE, pagkakaloob ang 13th month pay sa mga rank and file employees sa private sectors kahit ano ang kanilang posisyon at employment status sa kondisyong sila ay nakapagtrabaho na ng higit sa isang buwan ng calendar year. Samantalang mandatory benefit na ito ay hindi bababa sa 1/12 ng basic salary ng isang empleyado sa loob din ng calendar year na iyon. Iayon pa sa DOLE, dapat ang employer ang gumawa ng ulat ng kanilang pagsunod sa pamamagitan ng DOLE Establishment Report System bago matapos ang Enero 15, 2025.
Umaasa si Commission on Elections Chairperson George Garcia na makukumpleto na ang lahat ng kontrata bago ang katapusan ng Disyembre para makapagsagawa na sila ng mock elections sa January 2025. Tuloy naman ang iba pang aktibidad ng COMELEC sa 2025 kahit may pendency ng international certification kasama ang local source code review na nagsimula noong buwan ng Oktubre. Kabilang sa local source code review ang source codes para sa full automation system with transparency audit count of fast track at ang online voting and counting system para po yan sa overseas voters. Isusumite naman sa international certification entity ang mga tala mula sa review para sa sertipikasyon.
Masayang ibinalita ng Armed Forces of the Philippines o AFP na matagumpay na nakapagsagawa ang Philippine Navy at Air Force ng 54 na patrol missions sa West Philippine Sea o WPS. Sa isang press briefing, kinumpirma ng AFP spokesperson Colonel Francel Margaret Padilla na nagkaroon ng 3 sea lift missions, 13 maritime patrols o sovereignty patrols ang Pilipinas sa WPS. Bukod rito ay nakapagsagawa rin ng AFP na isang maritime surveillance patrol, isang search and rescue operation at isang rotation and resupply mission sa mga barko ng Pilipinas doon. Samantala, 4 na maritime surveillance o intelligence surveillance at reconnaissance operations ang isinagawa ng Philippine Navy at Air Force, kabilang narito ang 30 maritime patrols at isang search and rescue operation. Sinabi ni Colonel Padilla na ang lahat ng mga patrol missions na ito ay naisagawa ng Pilipinas nitong November 1 hanggang November 25. Kaugnay nito, binanggit ni Philippine Navy spokesperson for WPS Rear Admiral Roy Vincent Trinidad na patuloy na banta ang presensya ng Chinese Maritime Militia at ng Coast Guard nito sa West Philippine Sea. Anya, minomonitor ito ng Philippine Navy dahil matagal nang nananatili ang mga Chinese vessels na ito roon. Gayunman ay tiniyak ni Trinidad na sa kabila ng presensya ng China, patuloy pa rin isasagawa ng AFP ang mandato nito na pangalagaan ang WPS.
Inaresto ng Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency o PDEA ang isang suspect at nakumpiska ang pinaghihinalaang shabu na may halagang mahigit 7 milyon sa Cebu City noong Lunes ng gabi. Ayon sa PDEA, ang suspect na si Jason Bangeran, 46 na taong gulang, ay nahuli sa isang buy-bust operation sa Barangay Guadalupe. Nakuha po mula sa suspect ang 8 pakete ng shabu na tumitimbang ng mahigit 1 kilo at ilang marked money mula sa operasyon. Isinumite na sa PDEA ang mga ebidensya para sa tamang disposition. Sunod, 6 na katao patay dahil sa protesta sa Pakistan.
Gabinete ng Israel pagbobotohan na kung tutugon sa ceasefire deal sa Lebanon.
At Russia nagbanta laban sa nuclear talks ng Estados Unidos at Ukraine. Mga detalye ng mga balitang yan sa pagbabalik na Mata ng Agila International.
Still say that confidential funds, the use of confidential funds cannot be divulged. Sinasabi ko pa rin yan. They cannot be divulged in public. It will compromise lives and security.
Sir, there is no need for loyalty checks. Our Chief of Staff has already stated that he trusts that each soldier will perform its mandate accordingly and remain professional.
This was with the press con last night.
Yes, po.
Hindi ko pa kasi napanood. Pero, opinion naman niya yun eh. So, but again, nakita naman po natin yung direksyon ng House, yung sagot ng House, sagot ng ating mahal na Pangulong Bongbong Marcos.
Just this month, the Supreme Court received an anonymous complaint regarding her statements about the late President Ferdinand Marcos.
Isang ethnic army na bahagi ng rebel army na lumalaban sa ruling military ng Myanmar ang nagpahayag ng kahandaan nitong makipag-usap sa hunta matapos ang 1 taong labanan. Ang desisyon ng ang National Liberation Party o TNLA ay kasunod ng pressure mula sa China sa mga rebelde sa gitna ng mabilis na paghina ng military na itinuturing ng Beijing bilang tagapag-guarantee ng katatagan ng bansa. Sinabi ng TNLA na nais nilang ihinto ang mga airstrikes ng militar sa kanilang rehiyon at inilahad ang kanilang kagustuhang makipag-cooperate. Nagpahayag rin sila ng pasasalamat sa pag-mediate ng China sa dalawang panig. Samantala, wala pang pahayag ang dalawa pang grupo sa alyansa ng mga rebelde na Arakan Army at Myanmar National Democratic Alliance Army tungkol sa desisyong ito.
Nagpadala ng Chinese military ng Naval at Air Force upang manmanan at bantayan ang isang US Navy patrol aircraft na lumipad sa himpapawid ng Taiwan Strait. Ayon naman sa ulat ng US Navy 7th Fleet ay nagsagawa ng isang flyby ang isang P-88 Poseidon Maritime Patrol aircraft bilang patunay sa isang free at open Indo-Pacific. Sa pahayag ng naturang ahensya, nakasaad na by operating within the Taiwan Strait in accordance with international law, the United States upholds the navigational rights and freedoms of all nations. Sa isa namang pahayag na inilabas ng Chinese military ay kinundina ng ahensya ang naturang gawain na tila mapanlinlang umano para sa international community. Ayon sa Chinese Eastern Theater Command, the relevant remarks by the U.S. distort legal principles, confuse public opinion, and mislead international perceptions. We urge the U.S. side to stop distorting and hyping up and jointly safeguard regional peace and stability. Sabi naman ng Taiwanese Defense Ministry ay naganap ang naturang flyby ilang oras matapos ang tawag sa pagitan ng mga defense chiefs ng China at Estados Unidos.
6 na katao ang patay habang sugatan ng mahigit 100 miyembro ng security force ng Pakistan. Pinasok ng mga taga-suporta ni dating Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan ang Islamabad upang hilingin sa gobyerno na palayain na si Khan. Binaliwala ng mga rallyista ang pakiusap ni Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif na ihinto ng malawakang protesta. Sa halip, nakipagbakbakan ng grupo ni Khan sa mga otoridad na pilitan tuloy ang pulisya na gumamit ng tear gas para pauwiin ang grupo ni Khan. Dineploy din ng gobyerno ang militar at nagbigay ng shoot-to-kill order sa sinumang lalabag sa kanilang utos. Nagbabala rin ang gobyerno ni Sharif na magpapatupad ito ng curfew sa ilang lugar sa Pakistan para sa seguridad ng publiko roon.
यहाँ पहुंचेगा वो डेफिनेटली कोई सूरत नहीं है कि वो रश नहीं होगा। हम यहाँ पे आपको एक डिफरेंट स्ट्रेटजी के साथ नज़र आएंगे और डेफिनेटली अगर आते हैं तो ये नहीं हो सकता वो आएँ और हम उनको जाने दें। ये बड़ा क्लियर है।
Magsasagawa ng botohan ngayong araw ang gabinete ni Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ukol sa panibagong ceasefire deal. Kasunod ito sa pagpayag ni Netanyahu sa ceasefire deal ng Hezbollah base sa prinsipyo lamang. Ibig pong sabihin nito ay handa na si Netanyahu tanggapin ang naturang panukala, subalit inatasan niya ang kanyang gabinete na suyurin ang dokumento dahil sa ilang kondisyong iniharap sa kanila bago nila ito tuluyang makipagsang-ayon. May ilang pag-alinlangan ng Israel at ito ay patuloy na inaayos na inaasahang ipararating sa gobyerno ng Lebanon.
לגבי לבנון, המבחן של כל הסדר יהיה אחד, לא במילים, לא בניסוחים, אלא אחד בלבד, באכיפה. בשתי הנקודות העיקריות, אחת, למנוע מהחיזבאללה לרדת דרומה מהליטני, השנייה למנוע מהחיזבאללה לבנות מחדש את כוחו ולהתחמש מחדש בכל לבנון.
Una rito ay nakapulong ni U.S. Ambassador to Israel Amos Hochstein sina Lebanese Prime Minister Najib Mikati at ilang opisyal nito ukol sa ceasefire na isinusulong. Sa kabila po nito ay nilinaw ng Israeli government na hindi pa ito pinal hanggang sa hindi pa maresolba ang mga napapaloob na isyu dito.
This is a moment of decision-making. I'm here in Beirut to facilitate that decision, but it's ultimately the decision of the parties to reach a conclusion to this conflict. It is now within our grasp.
Sa kaugnay na balita, inaasahan niya anunsyo ang ceasefire sa pagitan ng Israel at Hezbollah sa Lebanon ngayong Martes.
And we are against that. We wanted to stop it because the country was paralyzed. Although it is in few parts of the country the fighting was, but the country as a whole is paralyzed. And we wanted to finish this and to have a ceasefire. Hopefully by tonight we will have this ceasefire.
Una nang iniulat na pupulungin ni Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ang high-level security cabinet sa Tel Aviv nitong gabi ng Martes para aprubahan ang ceasefire o tigil putukan sa pagitan ng Israel at terror group na Hezbollah sa Lebanon matapos ang mahigit isang taon ng giyera. Biglang karagdagang kondisyon naman, mag-i-issue din ang Estados Unidos ng isang sulat na kumikilala sa karapatan ng Israel para atakihin ang Lebanon sakaling labagin ng Hezbollah ang ceasefire agreement. Nauna nang napaulat na approved in principle na ni PM Netanyahu ang naturang kasunduan. Ayon sa isang opisyal sa gobyerno sa gobyerno ng Lebanon, ang panukalang ceasefire ay magtatagal ng initial na period na 60 days kung saan kasama sa magiging kasunduan ang pag-withdraw ng Israeli forces mula sa Lebanon. Bilang tugon, aalisin naman ng Hezbollah ang kanilang presensya sa timog ng Litani River na 30 kilometro ang layo mula sa international border at papalitan ng mga ito ng Lebanese army troops.
And this is as the Israelis withdraw will fill in their place around 5,000 troops. This would be added to around 5,000 that exist in the south. And in cooperation with UNIFIL, after 60 days, the only authority in South Lebanon, in south of the Litani, not South Lebanon, in south of the Litani, it would be the authority of the Lebanese government.
No. We won't do it.
Gayon din kasama sa ceasefire deal na dapat ay walang Israeli-occupied buffer zone sa southern Lebanon, habang ang US na namumuno sa 5-country committee ay dapat i-monitor ang pagpapatupad ng ceasefire. Naatasan naman pangasiwaan ng Lebanese government ang pagbili ng mga armas at produksyon nito sa naturang bansa.
And we are promised that the United States also in rebuilding, reconstructing the South, they would work on the infrastructure as well.
Agreement.
Hinikayat ni European Union Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell ang Israeli government na endorsohin ang ibinigay na ceasefire ng Lebanon.
On Lebanon, there is no excuses for a ceasefire. On the proposal agreement brokered by the US and France, Israel has all security concerns. There is not an excuse for not implementing a ceasefire. Otherwise, Lebanon will fall apart.
Tulong ng G7 foreign minister sa Italy ay sinabi ni Borrell na walang dahilan na hindi maipatupad ang ceasefire deal sa gitna o pagitan ng Israel at Hezbollah. Ayon sa isang opisyal sa Israel, nakatakdang aprubahan ng Israel ang plano ng Estados Unidos at Hezbollah. Dagdag pa ni Borrell na isa sa mga progresibong suhestyon na nilalaman ng panukala ay ang pagpasok ng isang komite ng France na nakatuon sa pagmonitor ng pagpapatupad ng napagkasunduang ceasefire.
So let's put pressure on Israel in order to approve the proposal of ceasefire today. But I heard voices from the extremist ministers of the Israeli government willing to continue the fight.
Sa kabila naman ito ay binatikos ni Borrell ang tila double standard ng West ukol sa nakatayong ICC arrest warrant laban kay Netanyahu, former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant at isang leader ng Hamas.
You cannot applaud when the court goes against Putin and remain silent when the court goes against Netanyahu. This is the typical example of two ways and two measures by which we are so much criticized. I asked the member states of the European Union to fulfill the obligations under international law. Like it or not, the International Criminal Court is a court.
Isinusulong na ngayon sa UN Summit ang 300 bilyong dolyar na pondo na gagamitin para labanan ang climate change. Layunin ng pag-uusap na matulungan ang mga developing countries na makabangon mula sa mga kalamidad at global warming. Malayo man sa $1.3 trillion na hinihiling ng mga bansa, ay mas mataas naman ito ng 3 beses sa napagkasunduan na $100 bilyong dolyar noong taong 2009. Dismayado naman ang ilang mga bansa na kagaya ng India at Nigeria kung saan ay sinabi nila na ito ay isang insulto. Ayon sa Pangulo ng World Resources Institute na si Ani Dasgupta, hindi sapat ang 300 bilyong dolyar para sa mga nakatakdang proyekto. Anya, dapat itaas ang pondo mula sa pampubliko at pribadong sektor dahil sa mas tumitinding pinsala na dulot ng climate change. Samantala, naniniwala ang UN Climate Change Executive Secretary na si Simon Steele na ang panukalang bagong pondo ay nasa proseso na ng Insurance Policy for Humanity.
Nagbabala si Russian security official Dmitry Medvedev na kung magbibigay ang Western countries ng mga nuclear weapons sa Ukraine, maaari itong ituring ng Moscow bilang isang direktang pag-atake sa Russia. Iniulat noong nakaraang linggo ng mga local media sa Estados Unidos na may ilang US officials na nag-iisip na magbigay ng mga nuclear weapons sa Ukraine. Itinuring ni Medvedev na seryoso ang ulat na ito at binigyang diin na kahit ang banta ng ganitong pagbigay ng nuclear weapons ay maaaring ituring bilang paghahanda pa sa nuclear war laban sa Russia. Sumang-ayon si Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov kay Medvedev at tinawag itong irresponsableng mga pahayag galing sa US officials at local media.
Даже у самой провокационной линии, нацеленной на эскалацию напряженности, есть такой крайне экстремистский фланг. Вот, наверное, такая точка зрения относится вот к этому крайнему экстремистскому. Ну, это абсолютно безответственное рассуждение людей, которые, ну, наверное, плохо понимают и представляют себе реальность, и которые не чувствуют ни толики ответственности, выступая с такими заявлениями. Но мы видим, что все вот эти высказывания носят анонимный характер.
Noong Lunes, nag-rally ang mga estudyanteng Romanians sa University Square sa Bucharest laban kay far-right presidential candidate Călin Georgescu. Natiyak nito ang isang kagulat-gulat na tagumpay sa unang round ng presidential election. Si Călin Georgescu ay isang matinding hard-right na kritiko ng NATO at malaking taga-suporta ng Russia. Nakatakda siyang humarap sa isang center-right opposition leader sa presidential election runoff sa Romania. Maaari nitong pahinain ng makakanlurang tindig matapos ang kagulat-gulat na resulta ng unang round ng eleksyon. Base sa polls, mababa ang hatak ni Georgescu bago ang botohan. Ginamit nito ang TikTok para patakbuhin ang kampanya. Bilang tugon sa social media campaign strategy ni Georgescu, gumamit ang mga estudyante ng online platforms upang organisahin ang kanilang protesta. Nakaakit ito ng daan-daang demonstrador.
We're here today because unexpectedly, one of the people who was the first person who was elected to go into the next rounds of presidential elections is Călin Georgescu, an extremist, a far-right extremist who is a pro-Russian, wants to take Romania away from the NATO course.
Hawak nila mga placard na nagsasabing no fascism, no war, no Georgescu in the second round. Gayun din ang Călin Georgescu never president. Sabay-sabay silang nagsasalita ng if we are together, we save the country from Georgescu. Nanalo si 62-year-old Georgescu ng 22.94% ng mga boto noong linggo. Natalo niya si center-right contender Elena Lasconi na leader ng opposition Save Romania Union.
Pinadidismiss sa judge ng U.S. prosecutors ang kasong kriminal laban kay President-elect Donald Trump. Ito po ay kaugnay ng balak nitong baliktarin ang resulta ng 2020 election results. Alamin natin ang detalye ng balita niyan mula kay Rose Papa Angeles.
Hiling ng prosecutors na i-dismiss ang 2020 election subversion case laban kay President-elect Donald Trump dahil anya sa pagbabalik nito sa pagkapangulo matapos manalo noong eleksyon. Ayon sa mga prosecutor na nakikipagtulungan kay Special Counsel Jack Smith, batay sa matagal na tuntunin ng U.S. Justice Department, ang mga nakaupong pangulo ng bansa ay hindi dapat humarap sa anumang criminal prosecution. Ayon din sa mga prosecutors, kailangang i-dismiss ang kaso bago manumpa si Trump sa 20 ng Enero. Ang aksyong ito ay isang kapansin-pansing kaibahan mula sa special prosecutor naman na nagsampa ng formal na akusasyon laban kay Trump sa dalawang magkahiwalay na kaso kung saan inakusahan si Trump ng pagbabanta sa integridad ng US election at sa seguridad ng bansa. Ipinapakita ng court document kung paano ang pagkapanalo ni Trump kay Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris ay hindi lamang tagumpay pampolitika, kundi legal din. Nag-plead ng not guilty si Trump noong Agosto 2023 sa 4 na federal charges na umakusa sa kanya ng pakikipagsabwatan na harangan ang pagkolekta at pagsertipika ng mga boto noong 2020 kung saan si Joe Biden ang nanalo. Rose Papa Angeles para sa mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Patuloy ang pag-anunsyo ni U.S. President-elect Donald Trump ng mga ipupwesto niya sa kanyang gabinete at mga pangunahing ahensya. Alamin natin mula kay Net25 correspondent Myla Simbulan kung sino-sino ang pinakahuling pili ni Trump.
Noong Biyernes, pinili ni President-elect Donald Trump ang prominenteng negosyanteng si Scott Bessent upang umupo bilang U.S. Treasury Secretary. Sakaling makumpirma ang nominasyong ito, si Bessent ay pupwesto sa gabinete na may malawak na impluwensya sa usaping ekonomiya, regulasyon at internasyonal. Nakamasid ng maigi ang Wall Street kung sino ang pipiliin ni Trump para sa pwestong ito, lalo na dahil sa plano ng bagong administrasyon na baguhin ang kalakalang pangmundo dahil sa taripa. Naging tagasulong ng tax reform at deregulation si Bessent. Sa kaugnay na balita, pinili naman ni Trump para kalihim ng Housing and Urban Development si NFL veteran Scott Turner. Si Turner ay mula sa Texas. Nagsilbi siya bilang kauna-unahang Executive Director ng White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council sa unang termino ng Trump presidency. Ayon sa pahayag ni Trump, kakatulungin niya si Turner to make America great again para sa lahat ng Americans. May nasimbulan para sa mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Ngayong taong 2024, naitala ang pinakamaraming namatay na aid workers. Batay po yan sa tala ng United Nations Humanitarian Office. Karamihan sa mga naitalang nasawi ay dahil sa Gaza conflict. Alamin natin ang detalye ng balita mula kay Rosel Feria.
Batay sa Aid Workers Security Database, ngayong 2024 ay may 281 aid workers na ang naging biktima ng labanan kumpara sa 280 noong nakaraang taon. Ang security database na ito ay nagtatala ng mga insidente mula pa noong 1997. Ipinakita nito na 178 ang namatay sa occupied Palestinian territories, kabilang ang Gaza ngayong taon. At 333 naman simula noong 7 ng Oktubre 2023. Ito ay sinasabing deadliest na labanan para sa United Nations. Samantala, 25 naman ang namatay sa Sudan. Ayon kay Jens Lurk ng OCHA, ang pagpatay sa aid workers ay hindi dapat ipagwalang bahala sapagkat ginagawa niya ng mga ito ang lahat para tumulong sa kapwa.
And these frontline workers, most of them national staff, our colleagues being killed, really doing the best humanity has to offer is outrageous and should hopefully make people sit up and take notice. I mean, regardless of your faith, or what religion you embrace. These people are doing God's work, and they're being killed in response. What the hell?
Ikinabibigo ni Lurk ang kakulangan sa aksyon upang bigyang katarungan ang pagkamatay ng frontline workers sa gera.
You're right, these are numbers that defy comprehension. And killing of aid workers may amount to, as you say, war crimes. We will let the competent judicial system decide that. But the process needs to happen. It needs to be clear that when this happens, there's a consequence. There's actions that are taken. And that's what we are not seeing to the extent that we want.
Nananawagan ang ahensya sa member states na protektahan ang humanitarian workers at panagutin ang mga may sala.
The Emergency Relief Coordinator, Tom Fletcher, decried that aid workers are being killed at an unprecedented rate. He called on states and parties to conflict to protect humanitarians, uphold international law, prosecute those responsible, and call time on this era of impunity.
Sa ilalim ng international humanitarian law, dapat proteksyonan ang buhay ng aid workers. Subalit ayon sa mga eksperto, sa ilang mga pagkakataon na ang mga kasong kagaya ng pagpatay sa aid workers ay aabot sa korte. Alalahanin ang mabigyan ng access ang aid groups, gayon din ang kahirapan na patunayan ang layunin ng mga sospek. Rosel Feria para sa Mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Susunod, forklift operator sugatan matapos mabagsakan ng isang container sa Singapore.
Conor McGregor guilty sa kasong sexual assault.
At Lilo & Stitch live action, inilabas ang unang teaser video. Mga balita pong yan sa pagbabalik ng Mata ng Agila International.
Say that confidential funds, the use of confidential funds cannot be divulged. Sinasabi ko pa rin yan. They cannot be divulged in public. It will compromise lives and security.
Sorry, there was no need for loyalty checks. Our Chief of Staff has already stated that he trusts that each soldier will perform its mandate accordingly and remain professional.
This was with the press con last night.
Yes, po.
Hindi ko pa kasi napanood. Pero, opinion naman niya yun eh. So, but again, nakita naman po natin yung direksyon ng House, yung sagot ng House, sagot ng ating mahal na Pangulong Bongbong Marcos.
Just this month, the Supreme Court received an anonymous complaint regarding her statements about the late President Ferdinand Marcos.
Plagiarizer.
Sa kasulukuyang henerasyon, marami na ang nag-viral. Dahil po yan sa kanilang ginagawang pagtulong sa kapwa. Pero mas marami ang tumutulong kahit walang nakakakita. Kaya naman kung ikaw ay may kilala na grupo o individual na may natatanging pagresponde sa lipunan at maging sa kalikasan, mag-text lamang sa 0915-415-1035 o mag-email sa responde@net25.com at magpadala ng mensahe sa ating Facebook page at Net25TV. Baka kayo na ang susunod nating Certified Key Responder.
Let's net together, sa Net25, sa Net25.
Sigit sa 80 migrante ang isinalba ng Spanish Coast Guard sa baybay ng Canary Islands sa El Hierro. Bruce Balmeo po para sa balita.
Nakita ang bangkang kahoy 10 milya ang layo sa El Hierro. Hinila ito sa Port Reskinga habang pinagmamasdan ng mga turista ang pagdaong ng bangka. Sakay ay 84 na mga migrante. Ayon sa EU Border Agency Frontex, nakapagrehistro na ang Canaries ng pinakamabilis na pagdami ng dumadaong na mga migrante mula sa dagat sa European Union ngayong taon. Ayon sa Interior Ministry ng Spain, noong 15 ng Nobyembre, tumanggap ang Canaries ng halos 38,000 migrants. Iyan ay 23% na pagtaas kumpara noong isang taon. Ngayong taon, tumanggap ang El Hierro ng kalahati sa irregular migrant arrivals sa Canaries, isang autonomous region ng Spain. Ang El Hierro ay hindi tumatanggap ng direct flights mula sa labas ng archipelago. Ayon sa Red Cross, may 19,400 na illegal migrants ang dumaong sa El Hierro noong kaligitnaan ng Nobyembre. Bruce Balmeo para sa mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Sa halip na makapag-relax sa kanilang bakasyon ay trahedya ang sinapit ng mga turistang lula ng isang yate matapos lumubog ito sa Red Sea. Ayon kay Red Sea Governor Amr Hanafi, patuloy na hinahanap ang 16 na pasahero habang nakaligtas naman ang 28 iba pa mula sa lumubog na barko. Sinabi ni Hanafi na binayo ng malaking alo ng yate dahilan para ito ay tumaob at lumubog. Marami anya sa mga pasahero ng barko ang natrap sa loob ng kanilang cabin. Nagsagawa ng airlift ang emergency services ng Egypt para saklolohan ang nakaligtas na mga turista. Nitong Sabado pa ay pinagbawalan na ng Egyptian Meteorological Authority ang paglayag sa Red Sea dahil sa masamang lagay ng panahon.
Dalawang eroplano kapwa nahagip ang kani-kanilang mga pakpak sa tarmac ng Logan Airport sa Boston, Massachusetts. Kinumpirma ng Massport spokesperson na nakatalaga sa insidente na walang nasaktan na pasahero sa nangyaring banggaan. 200 pasahero ng Frontier Light 3601 ang apektado ng collision. Binigyan naman ng $100 travel credit para sa mga susunod na flights, refund o kaya rebook ang lahat ng apektadong pasahero. Kasalukuyan pong nagpapagaling sa ospital ang isang forklift operator matapos ito mabagsakan ng isang container sa Singapore. Kinumpirma ng Port of Singapore Authority na bandang alas 7 ng umaga nang naganap ang insidente sa Pasir Panjang Terminal 3. Kita po sa video na iniaangat ng forklift ang isang container bago bumagsak ito sa operator. Sinabi naman ng Ministry of Manpower na nagtamo ng sugat sa ulo at katawan ang 37 anyos na lalaking biktima. Nagsimula na mag-imbestiga ang Port Authority ng Singapore sa insidente. Hindi papayagan ng Mexico na dumaan sa kanilang bansa ang mga produkto ng China na papasok sa Estados Unidos at Canada. Yan ang idiniing pahayag ni Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum noong Biyernes. Narito po ang detalye ng report mula kay Angela Guzman.
Nanindigan si Pangulo Claudia Sheinbaum na hindi niya papayagang gawing backdoor ang kanyang bansa para sa mga produkto ng China papuntang Estados Unidos at Canada. Ani Sheinbaum, lilinawin ito ng Mexico sa darating na trade meetings.
Nosotros pues nos interesa mucho el tratado con Estados Unidos, evidentemente. Y en las reuniones que tengamos en su momento con Canadá ya formales, con el equipo del presidente Trump, pues vamos a demostrar claramente cómo es falsa esta idea de que a través de México están entrando los productos, que entran por todas las vías en términos comerciales.
Ayon naman kay Finance Secretary Rogelio Ramirez de la O, plano ng bansa na palitan ng Chinese imports ng mga produktong gawa sa Mexico o sa Hilagang Amerika.
Pero en realidad México tiene esto como un proyecto propio, que quiere decir vamos a buscar qué productos estamos comprando de más en China para tratar de hacerlos en Norteamérica o en México, y en lo que corresponde a Norteamérica se calcularon los beneficios si todo Norteamérica empieza con esa visión de hacer más de lo que actualmente compra de China o en general de Asia, no?
Ang kalakalang China ay malaking issue para sa trade partnership ng Mexico sa US na pangunahing bumibili ng angkat na produkto nito. Gayun din sa Canada dahil sa kasunduan sa pagitan ng US, Mexico at Canada o USMCA Treaty, ito ay susuriin ng tatlong bansa sa taong 2026. NJ De Guzman, Washington DC para sa mata ng Agila International, trusted, connected, on point.
Inanunsyo ng mobile game company na Niantic na binubuo na nito ang bagong Large Geospatial Model o LGM mula sa pinagsama-samang scans na kinuha mula sa smartphones ng players ng Pokemon Go. Layo ng artificial intelligence o AI model na ito na magamit ng mga computers at robots bilang gabay sa pag-interact. Itinuturing ng Niantic na unique ang mga data na nakalap mula sa laro dahil hindi basta-basta nakukuha ito sa mga kalsada. Ibinunyag din ni Niantic Chief Scientist Victor Piasacariu na nakapag-develop na ang kanyang team ng 3D map ng mundo para maging basehan ng AI model. Sa kabila nito, marami ang hindi nag-aakalang magagamit pala ang data ng mga Pokemon Go players para sa ganitong uri ng AI product. Hinatulan ngayon ng Irish mixed martial artist na si Conor McGregor ng guilty sa kasong sexual assault. Inatasan ng hukuman sa Ireland si McGregor na magbayad ng $257,000 para sa kasong sexual assault. Kinilala ang biktima na si Mathay na nakaranas ng matinding pang-aabuso mula kay McGregor sa event na ginanap sa Dublin Hotel. Kasunod ito ng kaso na isinampa ni Mathay sa nangyaring sexual assault noong 2018 na nag-iwan ng sugat at post-traumatic stress disorder. Tumagal ang paglilitis na isinagawa noong Lunes ng higit sa 6 na oras kung saan 8 babaeng jury at 4 na lalaking jury naman ang nagbigay ng guilty verdict. Samantala, matapos ang naging desisyon ng hukuman ay agad namang umapela si McGregor sa hatol na guilty.
And Stitch is here. Ito ay matapos ilabas ang unang teaser video ng inaabangang live action ng pelikulang Lilo and Stitch. Nakatakda pong ilabas sa mga sinehan sa May 2025 ang live action ng Lilo and Stitch mula sa original animated version nito noong taong 2002. Bida sa pelikula ang karakter na si Maya Kealoha bilang Lilo, Sydney Elizabeth Agudong bilang Nanny at Kaipot Dudoit bilang David Cowena. Makakasama rin at muling magbabalik sa palabas sa mga voice stars na sina Chris Sanders, Tia Carrere, Amy Hill at Jason Scottley. Agaw pansin naman sa trailer ang isang asul na titular na siyang dahilan sa kaguluhan sa beach. Kasama na ang karakter na si Lilo or Lilo at ang aso na kanyang kinupkop na mula sa ibang mundo. Dagdag pa rito ang cute na si Stitch na lumusot at tumakbo mula sa buhanginan ng isla na nakapaligid sa isang malawak na karagatan.
Ayan, excited
Favorite
ako
mo yan, di ba?
Cute kasi talaga. Tapos ang cute kay Lilo kasi, fan siya ni Elvis Presley. Di ba, lilit na bata niya, what is she? Maybe like 10 or 11. Tapos talagang the way she would sing to Elvis Presley songs, ang cute niya. Tapos syempre si Stitch is a different level cute din, di ba?
Ako naman ito, siguro magbigay tayo ng konting tip sa kanila.
Yan.
Wicked. Napanood mo na ba niya?
Sabi mo nga, naku, isa-schedule ko yan this weekend.
Actually, bukas ibabalita natin kung paano talaga niya nauusan yung ibang pelikula. So, napakamaraming magandang palabas ngayon na pampamilya. Ayan nga si Lilo and Stitch. At yan yung Wicked. Matutuwa ka. Matutuwa ka kasi alam ko singer ka eh.
Hindi, ako lang nakakaalam nun. Paano mo alam yan, Rikki? Wala akong napagsabihan. But anyway, it's good kasi sa mahal ba naman ng movie tickets ngayon, best to enjoy watching movies with family.
Oh, yes. And it's a musical also. So, parang nanood ka na ng murang theater show.
Yun naman kung ikukumpara, tama ka. Mura siyang papa.
Yayain naman natin ang susunod na magbabalita sa inyo dahil nandito na po si Alma Angeles. At tandaan na mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes, narito naman kami na para maghatid ng balita saan mang dako ng mundo. Muli, ako po si Rikki Mathay.
Ako si Nina Richie Alagao Flores at ito ang Mata ng Agila International. Para naman po sa iba pang mga balita na nangyari sa iba't ibang panig ng mundo, punta naman tayo kay Alma Angeles para sa Mata ng Agila World News. Take it away, Alma.
Thank you, Nina and Rikki. Good evening, everyone. I'm Alma Angeles for Net 25 World News. On tonight's headlines.
Philippine authorities summoned Vice President Sara Duterte over alleged assassination threat against President Marcos Jr. stemming from her weekend claim of hiring a hitman to target him if she were killed.
Now, there are signs a ceasefire is imminent in Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel. Now, a ceasefire may be close, but it's not a done deal yet. Kremlin slams irresponsible Western discussions about arming Ukraine with nuclear weapons, responding to New York Times report of unnamed officials suggesting Biden could provide nuclear capabilities to Ukraine. Federal judge drops criminal case against Trump over 2020 election interference after prosecutors withdraw charges citing DOJ policy against prosecuting sitting presidents. And JAXA suspends Epsilon-S rocket engine test following a fire outbreak at a testing facility. These stories and more on our news headlines around the world. The news starts now. Philippine law officials have summoned Vice President Sara Duterte for questioning after her controversial weekend statements about contracting an assassin to target President Marcos Jr. if she were killed.
Duterte defended her remarks, calling them a conditional act of revenge and accusing the administration of twisting her words to create a false narrative. The National Bureau of Investigation has ordered Duterte to appear on November 29 to address allegations of making a grave threat and possible violations of the anti-terrorism law. In a weekend press conference, Duterte said she had instructed an assassin to target Marcos, his wife, and his cousin if she were harmed. Her office stated she was not present when the summons arrived, but Duterte has said she would cooperate with investigators. This escalates in an already bitter rift between the two leaders following the collapse of their political alliance. On Monday, President Marcos responded, vowing to address reckless and troubling threats, but did not name Duterte directly.
Walang pakundangang pagmumura at ang pagbabanta ng planong ipapatay ang ilan sa atin. Kung ganun na lang kadali ang pagplano sa pagpatay ng isang presidente, paano pa kaya ang mga pangkaraniwan na mamamayan? Yung ganyang kriminal na pagtatangka ay hindi dapat pinapalampas. Yan ay aking papalagan.
In her statement, Duterte rejected claims that her comments posed a real threat, saying, "Common sense should be enough for us to understand and accept that a supposed conditional act of revenge does not constitute to an active threat." And this follows weeks of tensions, including parliamentary scrutiny of Duterte's father, former President Duterte, over his controversial war on drugs, and Congress investigating the vice president for allegedly misusing public funds. A U.S. judge has dismissed a federal criminal case accusing Donald Trump of attempting to overturn his 2020 election defeat. And this after prosecutors moved to drop that prosecution and a second case against the president-elect, citing Justice Department policy against prosecuting a sitting president. Jane Kathleen Gregorio reports.
Never give up. We will never concede.
The order from the U.S. District Judge, Tanya Chutkan, puts an end to the federal effort to hold Trump criminally responsible for his attempts to hold onto power after losing the 2020 election. That culminated in the January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol by a mob of his supporters. The dismissal came after Special Counsel Jack Smith moved to dismiss the election case and end his attempt to revive a separate case accusing Trump of illegally retaining classified documents. It represents a big legal victory for the Republican president-elect who won the November 5th U.S. election and is set to return to office on January 20th. The Justice Department policy that the prosecutor cited dates back to the 1970s. It holds that a criminal prosecution of a sitting president would violate the U.S. Constitution by undermining the ability of the country's chief executive to function. The prosecutors in a filing in the election subversion case say that the department's policy requires the case to be dismissed before Trump returns to the White House. But they say the outcome is not based on the merits or strength of the case against the defendant. Trump had faced criminal charges in 4 cases, the 2 brought by Smith and 2 in state courts in New York and Georgia. A jury convicted him in the New York case, while the Georgia case, which also relates to his efforts to overturn the 2020 election, is in limbo. In a post on social media, Trump railed on Monday against the legal cases as a low point in the history of our country. Chutkan left open the possibility that prosecutors could seek to charge Trump again after he leaves office. But prosecutors would likely face challenges bringing a case so long after conduct involved in the case happened. Jane Kathleen Gregorio for Net25 World News.
Now there are signs a ceasefire is imminent in Lebanon between Hezbollah and Israel. 4 Lebanese sources say U.S. President Joe Biden and French President Emmanuel Macron are expected to make the announcement soon. Thomas I. Likeness for the report.
Such an announcement can't come soon enough for civilians in Lebanon, caught in the crossfire between the two sides. Even though a truce may be imminent, Israel continued to pound Beirut's southern suburbs on Monday. U.S. State Department spokesman Matthew Miller says gaps between the two parties have narrowed, but how close are they to laying down their arms?
Typically, when we say we're close, we have the caveat that nothing is final until everything is final, and that it takes the parties actually saying yes and getting there.
Miller says this phase of the talks is the hardest, and he says that's because the most difficult issues are left until the end.
That, of course, is true. Hopefully we'll get there with an agreement. We're pushing as hard as we can to get a diplomatic resolution that would allow these tens of thousands of people in Lebanon and Israel to return home, but ultimately that's up to the parties, not to us.
Meanwhile, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations also confirms ceasefire talks are moving forward. But Danny Danon insists that Israel will maintain an ability to strike southern Lebanon in any agreement.
You know, our goal was very clear, which is to push Hezbollah north of the Litani River. We haven't finalized it, but we are moving forward. I assume that the cabinet will meet today or tomorrow to discuss it. And I think for us it's important what will happen after. That Hezbollah will not be allowed to come back to the fence, and we will do whatever is necessary to guarantee it.
International pressure continues to be exerted on both Israel and Hezbollah to accept a ceasefire. European Union President Josep Borrell says a deal must be reached soon. Borrell describes the situation in Lebanon as precarious.
Lebanon is on the brink of collapse. With the war raging in the south, where tens of villages have been fully destroyed, and with the airstrikes against Beirut and in Baalbek, and rockets flying over Tel Aviv.
Borrell says the human toll is extremely heavy. Lebanon's health ministry reports that in the past year, Israeli attacks have claimed the lives of more than 3,700 people in the country. And the attacks have forced more than 1 million to flee their homes. Again, Borrell makes his plea for a truce.
We must pressure the Israeli government and maintain the pressure in Hezbollah to accept the U.S. proposal for a ceasefire.
As the talks continue, so does the shelling in Beirut. And emergency workers toil in the rubble from the destruction, looking for survivors, but often instead performing the grim task of recovering victims of the war. Again, for civilians, a ceasefire cannot come soon enough. Thomas I. Likeness, Net 25 World News.
Now, a ceasefire may be close, but it's not a done deal yet. Intense diplomacy for ceasefire continues amid escalating cross-border attacks between Israel and Hezbollah, with weekend violence claiming over 80 lives in Lebanon and injuring 4 in Israel as rockets struck buildings near Tel Aviv. A potential peace deal currently awaiting Israeli cabinet approval would require Israeli forces to withdraw from Lebanon, while Hezbollah moves north of the Litani River, with UN peacekeepers and Lebanese troops monitoring the border zone.
We are moving forward on this front. As I said many times, our goal was very clear, which is to push Hezbollah north of the Litani River. We haven't finalized it, but we are moving forward. I assume that the cabinet will meet today or tomorrow to discuss it. And I think for us it's important what will happen after. That Hezbollah will not be allowed to come back to the fence, and we will do whatever is necessary to guarantee it. We learned the lessons from 2006.
The urgency for peace grows as the conflict has displaced 1.2 million Lebanese and 60,000 Israelis. While the White House confirms active involvement in negotiations, officials stress that the agreement remains tentative until all parties formally accept its terms. China deployed naval and air forces to track and warn a U.S. Navy patrol aircraft flying through the Taiwan Strait, calling the move an attempt to mislead the global community. The USS Navy 7th Fleet confirmed the P-8A Poseidon aircraft operated in international airspace, emphasizing the mission as part of Washington's commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific. China, which claims sovereignty over Taiwan and the Strait, criticized the flight as a public hype. It stated its military effectively responded and urged the U.S. to stop distorting facts and maintain regional stability. These operations, often conducted monthly, regularly sparked tension. In April, a similar flight prompted a Chinese fighter jet response, highlighting ongoing friction over the contested waterway. And tensions continue to escalate in the Indo-Pacific, with disputes in the South China Sea remaining a central concern for both regional and global security. A recent discussion at a prominent foreign policy think tank focused on the ongoing challenges and opportunities in advancing a free and open Indo-Pacific. The conversation highlighted the key role that alliances and partnerships play in countering assertive actions in the region.
What you've seen this year diplomatically is a huge range of allies and partners, not only across Asia, but across Europe, standing up, stepping up in support of the Philippines. That happens in public statements. It's also happened in some very important convenings. You've also seen us coordinate more operationally together with countries like, the Philippines, United States, Australia, Japan, Canada, and others being increasingly interested in undertaking coordinated coordinated maritime operations to demonstrate our collective will to stand in favor of freedom of navigation in the South China Sea. But just as I mentioned that in general, the next phase of the game for all of this is to be able to operationalize the day-to-day spadework of coordination amongst allies and partners. That's going to be critical in the South China Sea. We are going to need to demonstrate that the PRC pays reputational costs when it takes coercive action that are inconsistent with international law. We are going to be able to have to demonstrate that we're willing to keep up the tempo of things like coordinated maritime activities. And we also are going to need to support the Philippines and other South China Sea claimants as they use diplomacy and the legal tools available to them to settle disputes between them to reduce the points of friction and leverage that the PRC may use to drive wedges amongst them.
China, however, views such collaborations as provocative.
菲方勾连域外国家，在南海频繁搞军演，兴风作浪，挑动对抗，迫害南海和平稳定，损害地区人民利益福祉。菲方还妄图以国内立法形式固化南海仲裁案非法裁决，把中国黄岩岛和南沙群岛大部分岛礁及相关海域非法纳入其海洋区域，严重侵犯中方在南海的领土主权和海洋权益，严重损害其他国家的正常航运航行权利。中方对此坚决反对。
Meanwhile, the Philippines remains firm in defending its territorial waters, as articulated by Defense Secretary Gilberto Teodoro.
So far as the Philippines is concerned, and in partnership with the United States, our main theme of cooperation here, aside from being treaty allies, stands firm. Upholding of international law and the fundamental and the values of freedom and democracy.
Again, this is concerning behavior, and we've made this point to our Chinese counterparts a number of times in a number of forums. So, again, we'll continue to work with our allies and make sure that we're doing the right things to promote a secure and open Indo-Pacific.
For Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell, the focus is on managing tensions without escalating the conflict.
We see the pressure magnified and amplified primarily in the Philippines, but the truth is that China's activities extend beyond that, Victor, in every maritime domain around Indonesia, around Brunei, Malaysia, and Thailand, and Vietnam. They each have different strategies, though, and I think part of what we've tried to do is to make sure, or to do what we can to make sure that countries are on the same page. China's determination is to try to cut its own bilateral agreements and extract a quid pro quo in each set of circumstance, and that puts enormous pressure on these small nations, and that's why American persistence and presence and consistency is so important.
As tensions mount, the region's future will depend on the ability of nations to work together and uphold the principles of international law and mutual respect.
The next phase of this game really is continued mobilization towards more seamless action, regardless of what the challenge is. We have to ensure that we are working together at every level of government across these partnerships, not just when a summit is occurring or when there is a particular crisis, but on the day-to-day spadework that gets done to try to reinforce international law in the South China Sea despite the PRC's challenges.
Sweden is asking a Chinese vessel to return to its waters to help with an investigation into damage to undersea fiber optic cables in the Baltic Sea. Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson said that the country is trying to get clarity on what happened after two subsea cables, one linking Finland and Germany and the other connecting Sweden to Lithuania, were damaged last month, raising concerns about possible sabotage. The cables, one connecting Sweden to Lithuania and the other linking Finland and Germany, were damaged in less than 24 hours on November 17 and 18, raising suspicions of possible sabotage. Sweden has launched a preliminary investigation into the breaches, which occurred within its exclusive economic zone. Danish
Military vessels have been monitoring the Chinese bulk carrier Yipeng 3, which was in the vicinity of the damage at the time. The ship had left the Russian port of Ust-Luga on November 15, and traffic data shows it passed through the affected areas, although other vessels were also nearby. The Yipeng 3 is now sitting idle in international waters, but inside Denmark's exclusive economic zone. The Danish military has not officially linked the ship to the cable damage, but has been keeping close watch on it. In response to questions about the Chinese vessel's presence, China's foreign ministry said that Beijing has maintained smooth communication with all parties involved. Prime Minister Kristersson told reporters that Sweden had reached out to both the ship and China, asking for the vessel to move towards Swedish waters for further investigation.
Från svensk sida har vi alltså haft kontakt med fartyget och kontakt med Kina och framfört att vi vill att fartyget rör sig mot svenskt vatten. Vi har framfört den ståndpunkten och den synpunkten. Här ligger ingen anklagelse om någonting och här ligger ingen del i brottsundersökningen, utan här ligger bara en svensk önskan att det fartyget ska röra sig mot svenskt vatten så att vi enklare kan samarbeta i vad som har inträffat.
The incident comes less than a year after a subsea gas pipeline and telecom cables in the Baltic Sea were damaged, which Finnish police have attributed to a Chinese vessel dragging its anchor. However, investigators have yet to determine whether the 2023 incident was accidental or intentional. Sweden hopes China will respond positively to their request to facilitate the investigation into these latest breaches as authorities work to determine whether the damage was a deliberate act. Indonesian rescuers are racing against time to find 7 people still missing after devastating landslides and flash floods in North Sumatra. Since torrential rains hit the province on Saturday, 15 lives have been lost, 11 in landslides across 3 districts, and 4 in flash floods in Deli Serdang, according to disaster agency spokesperson Abdul Muhari. Around 100 rescuers, along with police and military personnel, are battling persistent rain as they search for the missing. Abdul says the rain has been their biggest hurdle, but confirmed that efforts will continue through Saturday. The disaster left a trail of destruction, damaging homes, mosques, and rice fields, and cutting off road access to several villages. Heavy machinery is being used in recovery operations. Officials are warning residents to prepare for more potential flooding with heavy rains expected in the coming weeks. Landslides are a recurring issue in Indonesia, worsened by deforestation and illegal mining in rural areas. Universal's Wicked has cast a spell over the box office, earning a record-breaking $164 million globally in its opening weekend, making it the highest debut ever for a film based on a Broadway musical. Along with Gladiator 2, these blockbusters are providing much-needed relief for cinemas facing a challenging year in ticket sales.
It was a wickedly successful opening weekend for Wicked. The film's global box office take of more than $164 million marked the biggest debut ever for a movie based on a Broadway musical, according to Universal Pictures.
And Cynthia Ariana.
Starring Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo, Wicked is the first of 2 pictures based on the smash stage prequel to The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, you're green. I am.
Universal spent roughly $160 million to make the first Wicked film, and that's minus a marketing campaign ranging from a Super Bowl ad to hundreds of Wicked products. Moviegoers not into pink and green may have made their way into the weekend's other big blockbuster, Gladiator 2, which took in $106 million globally. The 2 films, dubbed Glicked by fans, delivered a much-needed jolt to movie theaters. In the US and Canada, ticket sales have hovered below pre-pandemic levels as cinemas grapple with competition from streaming and disruptions from last year's Hollywood strikes. Sunday's overall tallies showed year-to-date domestic ticket sales down 10.6% from the same time in 2023, according to ComScore. But box office analysts say receipts from Thanksgiving through the end of the year could rank as the biggest in cinema history. That is, perhaps until next year, as the second Wicked film is scheduled for release in November of 2025.
And the news continues here on Net 25. We'll be right back.
Still say that confidential funds, the use of confidential funds cannot be divulged. Sinasabi ko pa rin yan. They cannot be divulged in public. It will compromise lives and security.
Australia is set to implement what could be the world's toughest restrictions on social media use for young people, sparking intense debate across the nation. Take a look. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced today that Australia will ban social media use for anyone under 16, introducing stringent age verification measures that could include biometrics and government ID checks.
Mr. Speaker, I want to make 5 because we're doing more than setting a new minimum age of 16 for social media. We are setting a new community standard, making it clear that social media companies have a social responsibility, and sending a message to all those mums and dads who are worried about the impact that social media is having on their children's well-being, their mental health, their confidence and their sense of self. That message is simple. We are on your side. We've got your back.
In a significant privacy protection move, social media companies will be required to destroy all personal data used for age verification.
They'll be very strong and strict privacy requirements to protect people's personal information, including an obligation to destroy information provided once age has been verified.
The landmark legislation would affect major platforms, including Meta's Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and X, with companies facing penalties of up to 49.5 million Australian dollars for violations. However, the move has faced pushback from various quarters, including teenage entrepreneur Leonardo Puglisi.
Yeah, I think this ban will really stifle creativity. Look, not just in Australia, but there have been young people around the world from the ages of 13, 14, 15 who've been able to explore their passions, maybe make a career out of it through social media in some form or another. There's plenty of people at 6 News who have seen 6 News and then been able to join the team from there and explore their passion in media and in journalism. You know, it's been my passion this entire time, and it wouldn't have been possible under a blanket ban. So
the legislation has also drawn criticism from tech industry leaders, including ex-owner Elon Musk. The proposed measures represent the highest age restriction globally, with no exemptions from parental consent or existing accounts. Prime Minister Albanese noted that other nations are closely watching Australia's initiative, suggesting it could become a model for similar regulations worldwide.
This is an issue that governments around the world are grappling with. And can I say, when I was talking with leaders of European and North American and other countries in our own region as well, including Prime Minister Luxon of New Zealand last week, they are all looking at what we are doing, and they are applauding what we are doing in showing leadership in this area.
I think so, and I hope so. I think for a couple of reasons. We have the technology today that exists. We have strong regulatory frameworks like the Privacy Act and the Digital Identity Act that exist and are coming into force. I think the key is how do we apply those in a way that protects young people online, protects everybody across social media interactions. So the building blocks are in place. I think the trial will hopefully really just pull together how do we get this right, and how do we make sure we put all those building blocks in place in the right order? So I'm hopeful that the 6 to 12 months is a good sensible time frame to really really think this through.
Tech giants are racing to put humanoid robots in homes and workplaces as the market for lifelike androids heats up. Take a look.
Recent advancements in artificial intelligence and engineering have the potential to change the world in many ways, from healthcare to disaster response. And now there's a push from companies racing to be the first to introduce AI-powered robots into our everyday lives. With proponents like Tesla CEO Elon Musk saying there could be billions of humanoid bots roaming the Earth by 2040 and costs falling, the market looks set to explode. Here at the International Conference on Humanoid Robotics in Nancy, France, more than 24 companies alongside research institutions are showcasing their latest machines.
We are really witnessing a huge revolution, a huge increase in the number of startups.
Serena Ivaldi is Director of Research at the INRIA Center at the University of Lorraine.
In the last year, there has been a revolution in the actuation and in some mechatronics components, and so the robots now are more robust, more efficient, more performing, and also the cost has decreased, which enables more companies, more labs to produce new prototypes.
Ivaldi says that cheaper engineering costs have allowed a rise in startups developing robotics. While engineers design the machines to mimic human form and movement, AI provides the brain power, helping the robots to learn from their environment, make decisions, and perform complex tasks. Ivaldi also says new AI methods that incorporate image and language processing will make the machines more useful.
Right now, in the AI domain, there is a lot of work that is done with the pre-trained models that start from a lot of examples, a lot of demonstrations. But I think it's not that far the moment where the AI methods will exhibit the generalization capacity that enables the robot to do new stuff that is explained on the fly without having demonstrations.
Companies like Microsoft, Google, Meta, Amazon, and Nvidia have already invested billions in adopting AI. According to venture capital firm Excel, funding of AI and cloud companies in the US, Europe, and Israel is estimated to hit nearly $80 billion by the end of 2024. But as some robots showed off their skills at the conference, Agnieszka Łukowska from the Italian Institute of Technology warned that we are still a ways away from seeing the sorts of robots we'd recognize from science fiction.
Well, I guess at this moment is what I just mentioned, is being naturally in real time able to respond to the environment, to the human, and act in complex environments like home, for example, or clinical setting like where we are. So I think this is still a big challenge, and we're very far away from making robots fully autonomous to be able to interact with humans in such a way.
For the whole Mata ng Agila team, this is Alma Angeles reminding you that kindness knows no boundaries. Thank you for keeping me company tonight. We'll see you back tomorrow. Good night.